Aloha, and welcome to the 27th Annual 2020 Hawaii and Children's Youth Summit. I'm Hunter Harris, your student representative on the Board of Education, and I will be your MC for today. To start off our summit, I would like to go over a few Zoom keeping items. We will be in this webinar link for opening and closing circle each day. You should have the links to the breakout sessions for the topics: healthy mind, healthy body, homelessness and housing, education, equality, diversity, and safety, and the environment. When we release you from this opening circle, please go to your breakout session link. Please take a moment to check if you have the link in your email. You should have received it last night. If not, please use the QR code to choose a breakout session. Lastly, please make sure to use the chat function located at the bottom right-hand side of your screen if you have any questions. The Children and Youth Summit provides the opportunity for youth professionals and policymakers concerned with improving the well-being of Hawaii's children to come together to voice their concerns to be heard. By participating, you have chosen to take action to improve our future. We thank you for your participation today. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Hawaii State Legislature's Keiki Caucus, who support our youth voices, and the Na'ale Aloha Foundation, whose sponsorship makes CYS possible. We are also extremely grateful for the work that the Hawaii Youth Service Network of collaborators, youth facilitators, and volunteers who are working behind the scenes to make this happen. Their work has made it possible for us to come together and discuss our concerns. Mahalo for your support. The 2020 Youth Summit would also like to recognize some other dignitaries who have taken time to join us today. We have Amy Peruso in the audience. She will be a key member of this year's Keiki Caucus. Mahalo for joining us, Amy. We will now start the panel discussion from a special group of elected officials and youth leaders from 10:15 to 10:55. We will hear from the Lieutenant Governor Josh Green and youth panelists who work in our communities. They will be asked questions related to our breakout topics following the questions from the audience. Thank you for joining us, youth panelists. Dr. Josh Green is a husband, father of two, and local physician who has spent his life caring for our Hawaii families. He continues to work as an ER doctor on the Big Island and currently serves as our Lieutenant Governor. He has been instrumental in caring for our community during this pandemic. Welcome, Dr. Green. At this time, I would like to invite the Lieutenant Governor to share a few words with our attendees.
Welcoming me. I so appreciate it. I like the Children and Youth Summit because it is a way to get you guys activated right now in a meaningful policy way, and it can be meaningful. The legislators, I know they will say it to you, but I believe they actually mean it. I've served in the legislature for 14 years. When they get a fresh perspective from fresh eyes, from people who care about issues, it often really resonates. And I have seen on many occasions when there's been policy questions that affect young people or everyone, that they take to heart their testimony and their involvement. It really matters. A couple examples would include when we were talking about youth tobacco use. That was a very big deal. When we moved the age up to 21, that I think we were the first state to do. It was really younger people that convinced the Department of Health and the health committees to be activated. There's certainly a lot on the line these days, and with the economy going through significant transformation because of COVID, it's going to impact us all. I was on a call this morning with the governor, and we were already projecting what it will look like for 6 years. So don't think of yourselves only in the context of today. If you're 17 years old or 16 or what have you, think of what it will be like here in Hawaii 6 years from now and the impacts of things that are happening today. So I really appreciate you welcoming me and letting me participate today. I thought I might make a few comments about COVID because I think it's on everyone's mind, and I'm central in the response. Is that okay? Okay, so we've had 13,000 cases in the state of Hawaii. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough to interview Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tony, and it was really amazing to hear his perspective on what Hawaii is doing, on whether we're putting successful policies together, what the rest of the country looks like, what it will be like to have a vaccination in the later part of this year or early next year. Just a lot of interesting moments. They're going to run that again tonight, by the way. And of course, you can get it on social media. But it was fascinating to see that. And with our 13,000 cases, of which 2,378 are active right now, it's a problem for us today. 101 new cases today. We have had 163 fatalities, which is heartbreaking, and 111 people are in the hospital as of this moment. We're looking in 1 week to begin the slow resurrection of the economy by bringing tourism back. People will have to get a test before coming to Hawaii. It's a policy we put together. Within 72 hours of departure from the mainland, they will be able to come to Hawaii, not quarantine, therefore have a vacation, if they get a nucleic acid amplification test from one of our partners. And our partners are a bunch of them: CVS and Walgreens and Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines and all these groups. You can see all this stuff if you're interested on our website, the hawaiicovid19.com website. I know you guys are next gen and you're not using websites. All I can say is Department of Health is not next gen, okay? We're doing our best as older people, but that's where a lot of the data will live. So it's very important to check that if you can. We are also not going to require testing of children under age 5, and people can come, and like I said, we start the economy again. We don't expect a lot of travelers at first, but we expect to build, and we can build safely. That negative test will mean less than 1 out of 1,000 people come in positive. They would be asymptomatic for sure, which has been between 14 and 45% of all cases of COVID. People have been asymptomatic carriers, often the case of young people. I have children that are closer in age to you guys. My children are 13 and my son is 9. And it's pretty extraordinary to watch what happens, how different it is for a young person who gets COVID versus someone who's much older. And I had COVID. I finished my my fight with COVID 2 weeks ago, and it was not that pleasant, I have to tell you, but it was okay. I worked through the process, but it certainly is something we have to be mindful of. And you guys, by doing your part, by being smart, and when I say smart, I just mean wear a mask around others. That is it. If we do that, we have a mask on, we stop the virus in its tracks. If we don't have a mask on, we're doomed to spread. 57% of people on Big Island are wearing masks, 68% on Kauai, 70% on Maui, and 84% on Oahu at last test. So these are policy questions, right? These are the kind of things that you could weigh in on as you have a summit and talk about what actually works versus what people think works, but it's not based on analytics. And that is the way we can approach better government. Government is not always convenient. It's not always nice and clean. It can be sloppy the way bills are made. But if you wade in now, you will have an important presence going forward. Many of you will end up studying political science or economics, sociology, all of these things that are central to government and public life. And I would just love to see many of you grow into this space if you liked. My team, once COVID crisis is over, we would love to have you as interns, if I can be so bold. If you write me, I put my cell phone and our social media links there or hooks there. We would love to have more volunteers. We had like 15 interns at one point before this outbreak. So I hope you guys will take us up on our offer. What you'll do is you'll ask for Fele or Jordan in my office, and they'll get the information. But you got my cell. Just text me, and we'll figure out. I'll get you right over to my teammate. Okay, and that would be really, really good for our team to have nice, young, bright faces. And also, look, if anybody has projects they want to do, whether it's for high school or once they get to college, it's really good for us and all. So I welcome you into that world, and I hope that just that small, I just want to maybe stop there and pause there so you can spend more time with questions that are relevant to you. There's so much to talk about as far as COVID. There's so much to talk about as far as what goes on. You've got one of the new stars at the legislature. Amy is on this call, I believe. So she's already a really strong advocate for younger people involvement, which is frankly just great. So I'm glad to see you. And then of course we've got Judith, Judy, who's for a long time been a leader with you guys. So we may not be of your generation, but we want to be supportive of your generation. And The more you do now, the less I'll have to do in the coming years. So again, thanks for including me, and I'll stop there.
Hello, Dr. Josh Green. At this time, I would like to introduce our panelists. So first we have the Lieutenant Governor, then we have Cameron, a community organizer for our space, Dyson, a climate advocate, Aaron Enriquez, a co-collaborator of the Ho'ohuli Youth Voter Guide, Zoe, youth health advocate, and myself, Hunter Harris, a senior from Kapolei High School. Coco and Reggie will be facilitators for this panel. You might have recognized them from their breakout session topic videos. Take it away, Coco and Reggie.
Mahalo, Hunter. Hi, everyone. I'm Coco, and I go to Moanalua High School. I am a senior.
And I'm Reggie. I am a recent Hawaii Job Corps graduate, and I now attend Edison Job Corps studying IT.
For the panelists, can you please let everyone know what organizations you work with and where you are from? We will then follow with the questions. Let's start with Lieutenant Josh Green.
Hi. So yes, please do call me Josh or LG, whichever you prefer. I grew up in the mainland, Pennsylvania. I came here, I'm a physician, so I'm on call this weekend even, still work as a doctor, came with the National Health Corps, and now I'm serving as Lieutenant Governor. Was in the Senate for 10 years and the House for 4 years. So I've got a couple different hats that I wear.
Thank you. Let's go to Cameron.
Hi guys, I'm Cameron. First, I just want to apologize. My voice cuts out in and out. I woke up with a sore throat yesterday morning, so I'm still kind of combating that. But hi, I'm Cameron. I'm 17. I just recently graduated from Hawaii Technology Academy, and I also, I guess, wear a few different hats. I'm a part of HCYS2020, the climate organization for youth. And I think today I'll be representing our space, which is a new program that a few friends of mine have been starting up. It's going to be a safe space for Black youth in Hawaii. So yeah, very excited to share about that today, and I'll pass it on to somebody else.
Mahalo, Cameron. How about Dyson?
Aloha, my Coco. My name is Dyson Shi. I live in Ala Moana, and I graduated as a homeschooled high schooler. And I'm here representing Hawaii Youth Climate Coalition, which is also the climate organization that Cameron is a part of.
Awesome. Thank you, Dyson. Now, Zoe.
Hello, everyone. I am a junior at Punahou School, and I am also a member of the Hawaii Public Health Institute Youth Council. And yeah, happy to be here.
And Aaron.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Erin Enriquez. I'm a Pearl City High School graduate. I currently attend American University in Washington, D.C., which is where I am right now. I'm currently studying international affairs, and I am the co-founder of Ho'ohuli, and I'm also affiliated with Youth Action Alliance Hawaii.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And last but not least, we have a Hunter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter Harris. I'm a senior at Kapolei High School, and I serve as this year's Board of Education student representative.
Thank you, Hunter.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with our questions. And here's the first question. So what was a defining moment for you, Lieutenant Governor Green, that pushed you to take part in politics?
The moment that I decided to go into politics was in 2003. I was working as the clinic doctor and ER doctor in Ka'u on the Big Island, and there were two children I saw in the hospital. Both were 1 year old. One child fell from a balcony from a lanai on the second floor and passed away because we didn't have any trauma services available. And unfortunately, it was an accidental death, but from neglect because one of the parents was heavily on methamphetamine. And then the second child, about 6 weeks later, was run over by a car by the grandpa who didn't realize his toddler was behind the car because the parents had both fallen asleep on drugs. And that child, whose head was crushed, lived and actually did wonderfully well because the nurses and me to a lesser degree saved the child's life. And so at that moment, I realized that we had a significant problem with drug addiction and lack of treatment and trauma services. And I felt that being an ER doctor, just doing that as a job, which was a great job, I just wanted to do more, honestly. And I wanted to fight for more services and treatment and so on. And that was when I decided to run, and I was able to successfully run for the House of Representatives the next year.
Thank you. And this is another question for you, and then we'll move on. So what will be your focus once we've gotten through this pandemic? For example, restaurants, unemployment, the economy, etc.
Yeah, so my focus will be twofold. It will be rebuilding the Hawaii economy in a more diversified way so that this doesn't happen to us again, having to shut down a single industry and leaving us without economic activity, and to resume our work on building kauhale and homelessness solutions so that people who are really in deep trouble have at least tiny homes to live in without having to be on the street and on drugs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. And this question is for all the panelists. What do you think about lowering the voting age to 16?
Lowering the age to 16, I think it's really important to do that because at 16, you can already get a job and start paying taxes. You can essentially be an adult without being a legal adult at that point. And by then you have all of your opinions and already making decisions that affect your life. So why not make decisions in civic engagement? Because you are already participating.
I agree with Erin. I think that, like, for me, it's really frustrating this year because I'm still 17 and my birthday is not till November 6th and election day is November 3rd. So I can't participate in this election year, which is a really big election year. So yeah, it's been sort of very frustrating for me. So, but I'm glad that I can do other things, like encourage my friends to vote who are able to, and do other things like voter registration. So yeah.
Just to add on what Erin and Cam said, which I think are really valid points. As a 16 or 17-year-old, you can get married. You're usually kind of expected to have a job, at least during the summer. You are more or less expected to drive, which allows you to contribute to the economy and pay taxes to a government, which then uses your tax money for purposes which, sorry, but you can't vote for those. And it's the whole idea of taxation without representation, right? I think pretty much everyone who lives in the United States is taught that sentence at a younger age. And yet here we are having a form of legal discrimination against 16 and 17-year-olds who pay taxes yet have no representation. And so I understand that there's logistics that come with this, but I really do believe that if the youth of the islands can collaborate with offices like Office of Election and to smooth out the technical and logistical issues that come with lowering the voting age to 16 and 17, so long as there's the political willpower to make it happen, I really do believe that it's something that's possible and something that we should be doing.
Yeah, I have to agree with Dyson on that, especially because I've come to realize that the recent generation of 16 and 17-year-olds are very strong in their civic engagement and advocacy, whether it be for climate change or for systemic prejudice. A lot of kids at my age, I'm 16, have expressed their political views and their political interests to me. And I know that they've been frustrated by their inability to vote. And I think that it is something that we can definitely progress on so that we can include the opinions of this newer generation.
Shall I weigh in? I really respect your opinions, and I think that you're right. I think as we go through this process, if you have the will to vote, you should be able to vote. And of course, there has to be some threshold. To ask a 12-year-old to vote, that's not what we're talking about. But to ask someone who's already paying taxes, who already, let's just be honest out there. People are maturing earlier. People are working earlier. They're educating themselves earlier. They are in more significant relationships earlier than we used to be. All of these things are relevant. And if we did lower the age to 16, 17, 16, wherever you go, right? First of all, it wouldn't leave people in that gray zone of now they're out of high school even. They won't be able, they'll certainly be able to vote. And also, it is just very compelling that if you're paying taxes and contributing to society that way, that you have a say. I will tell you this, we have very few people that vote at a young age in general. Okay, in general. There was one election I was a part of where we were not able to confirm that anyone under age 25 voted in the primary. 0 people. Now, the primary, sometimes people blow off because they figure it's not the big election and so on. But in Hawaii, the primary is very important. Most of the elections are resolved there, except for the presidential, right? So it's a compelling case you make, and I like it.
I'd also just like to add on, it's important for youth to always stay educated, you know, about what's going on in our legislature and what's going on kind of as the bigger picture. And it's definitely important for us to always stay educated, and that makes it important for us to vote, because I know that we're all able to vote and make our own opinions. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a question in the chat box that just came in, kind of building off of this question. It says, it would seem that our panelists believe that there's power in the ballot box. Is this a valid assumption / generalization? We can just make this quick.
Well, for sure. The answer to that is absolutely yes. There's some frustration about the national impact of our votes because we are in a state that's considered deep blue. And there are deep red states too, which is fine. And so often our vote for the national candidates is almost a foregone conclusion. I personally believe in the national popular vote. I would like to see that so every vote can be relevant and we feel connected. But your vote does definitely matter. The state house and state senate races, for example, are often swung by just 300 or 400 votes. So if you actually imagine if you motivated your cohort on Instagram and you got 400, 500 people to absolutely go vote, you could swing an election, period, right away. So you can be powerful if you choose to be.
Thank you. We have another question from the chat box. This is for Lieutenant Governor. So do you think drug prevention programs in school as they are now are working?
I would say overall they help. I don't know if they are good enough. It's a deep concern because kids are starting younger and younger with trying drugs, and the drugs that came from my generation, which were more like marijuana and alcohol, if I can be blunt, while not probably great because we still are developing when we're young, do not have nearly the impact that heroin and methamphetamine have on the body and brain. And so when people start, any people, whether someone's 13 or 32, tries a drug of that potency, it can be terrible. So I do think we have to get education in very soon and really early. Again, I don't know that we stop enough. We're not doing a good enough job stopping a different drug, which is vaping and tobacco. I mean, that vaping is running over us right now, and tobacco will certainly take more lives than alcohol or meth over the course of a year. Just later in life with cardiovascular disease. So I'm a big supporter of any prevention we can get. We usually don't get much for our budgets.
Okay, and I do have a question for our panelists. If we could start off with Dyson. What do you think would be the best way for youth to exercise their civic engagement and or express their voices?
Good question, Reggie. From my personal experience, what I've seen in terms of youth being engaged with civics is that there's a few ways you can go about this. One of the most powerful ways that I've seen youth do this is by coalescing together in a group and pushing hard on one piece of legislation that they all collectively think needs to be passed, rather than spreading themselves out thin. Because and this example I'm using here is Bill 40, which is the single-use plastic ban that was passed by the City and County of Honolulu, I think it was December 2019. And that legislation, when thousands of youth got behind it, was able to pass more smoothly than if they hadn't gotten behind it. And I know that a lot of times we think that as individuals, we don't have a lot of power and that we're very limited. But when you coalesce with groups of individuals and that coalition gets bigger and bigger and snowballs, now you have a force that's to be reckoned with. And I think that's where youth were most powerful, is when we're advocating for a specific piece of testimony and gathering all of our energy behind it.
Thank you very much for that. And yes.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was just going to add that I'm part of the initiative behind prevention for tobacco use and vaping. And I think one of the really important things that we did was to gather youth. And like Dyson said, we had very specific pieces of legislation that we were backing up. And we tried to get all of our youth to show their voice by testimony and by writing letters, by presenting to their local schools. And I think having those people actively on board is really helpful to show your civic engagement as like a youth.
May I? All right. For those who don't know, Ho'uhuli is a youth voter guide. So it's actually entirely written by youth. So when we come together and we take in all of these resources and learn about the people that we're voting for, that in itself is an amazing civic engagement, because you are putting yourself into that process of how elections are done and what issues matter, and then knowing what issues matter to us.
Does anyone else want to add to that?
I'll just add really quickly. I think they kind of said it all, but like the underlining thing for me is like, don't limit yourself in a way. Like there's no larger conversation that you might feel like are for adults that you can't also be a part of. Yeah.
Thank you. So our next question is kind of drifting away from this, but how is Hawaii preparing for sea level rises? And do you think we do have a plan for when it happens?
If it's okay. So I think we haven't planned adequately. We have a lot of plans on the shelf, but we haven't figured out how we're going to finance properly the changes that have to occur. Just to riff with you about this very briefly, there's 2 or 3 different things that have to happen. Number one, we have to lead by example, even though our impact on global warming and greenhouse gases is pretty small, given the fact that we're such a small state. But we do have a big impact and a carbon footprint because people travel here. So, you know, it's kind of a deal with the devil, right? Because people are going to keep coming here and using a lot of carbon, and we want them here and we need them here, but also it creates added global warming. So there's that. But we can mitigate that with good technologies, lower fuel using planes and so on. So that's a positive thing. Now, how do we deal with the actual sea level rise? Well, that is an enormous challenge because it's going to require billions and billions of dollars to help retrofit what we have or what we choose to have near the ocean. And even if you just move back a little bit, you're still near the ocean and you're still going to be subject to sea level rise. We have to support cultures that are indigenous to the Pacific Islanders and the other regions, because they are going to be displaced. There's no amount of support that we can offer to them now to stop global warming from rising the seas above their land. So we have to be welcoming. We're going to have to be culturally accommodating when people come here and more people live here from these places. And then finally, we're probably going to have to use some new mechanism of funding. Some people think that you can use kind of a new form of bonding resources, long-term bonding, to build out extra infrastructure to deal with global warming. And that is possible, but it's going to probably be your generation's largest challenge, because it's going to be not just sea level rise, but it's also going to be global refugees, and that will lead to a lot of different challenges.
Alrighty, and before we do move on to the next question, does anybody else have anything to add in?
Yeah, sure. I'll drop in something really quick. Thanks, Reggie. In terms of being able to combat sea level rise, we have a lot of goals in place, and we have plans that are being sketched out right now, we desperately need is the implementation of those plans very soon and the execution of them. We do have a 2045 goal of 100% renewable energy. And the problem is we are rapidly changing our climate, and scientists, they're now saying 2030. And so because of that, we have to realize that we're a couple steps behind of where we need to be. And also too, there are actions that are being taken though. I think, for example, the city and county of Honolulu, they have started a lawsuit against the fossil fuel industry and are suing them in order to get the money that we'll need to shift all of our infrastructure and to protect or move all of basically our cities away from the ocean. And those kinds of things are kind of needed right now, because otherwise guess who pays for them? It's taxpayers. And taxpayers, we can't afford to be paying billions of dollars to fix an issue that was promoted by an industry that's getting billions of dollars off of it every year. So I think actions like that are ones that we need, bold actions to move forward.
All righty, and moving on to the next question. What do you feel is the most effective way to transform a community, and why?
One of the most effective ways to transform a community is to really be in the trenches with people who are different from you. And so that means if you have a good household and you have some resources, to be a part of organizations where people have different resources, different experiences, you can really transform communities if people get to know one another in a good way and you support them in their times of need. I found that that is very important, because if you don't know the people that are struggling in your community or who are going through tougher times, we often set that group up as another or the other, and then they get victimized or are marginalized very easily. If you know people, it doesn't go that way. We're much more inclined to be generous and find real solutions for them. And then in turn, when they do better, like when we, for instance, have transformed some of the homeless camps, when those individuals get better and are doing well and aren't suffering with addiction or mental illness, they are very powerful. They're very powerful people of change. They can change things even faster for more individuals. And so that kind of engagement is something that I would recommend.
Would anyone else like to add to that? Okay. Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, just be as engaged as you can as an individual. I realize we have other things, school, sports, academics that we have to deal with in our lives as well. But just be as engaged in the community. Like Lieutenant Governor said, just have your hand in the community and share a part of your energy and your time and put it into the community. Because when you do that, the community also gives back, and it's reciprocal. It goes both ways.
Thank you, Tyson. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just wanted to add something really quick. I think one trend that I've seen in youth advocacy is that a lot of the times youth feel like they're by themselves, but I found that adults are really great partners in helping with your advocacies. So make sure to be cooperating and working alongside adults rather than against them, because I found that when adults and youth come together, it's extremely powerful.
Thank you. And so we're going to move on to our last question. What needs to be done to ensure that special education students and their families get the services they need? Some of these services really need to be provided in person.
So when we talk about equity, especially in education, it is really, really complex, because as much as we want to be accommodating to people who have special needs, we also have to be aware of every other student. But it is so vitally important that everybody gets the education they deserve, because when we look into education policy, it doesn't serve every single student, because no student is made the same. And when we take that into account when we're talking about special needs students, Hawaii hasn't done a great job in the past in servicing that. And there should be more funding going into that. in order for special needs students, people to get, and special needs educators to get the money they deserve and to receive the quality education that they need. Okay, thank you.
And I can add on to that. So I think one of the things that I do agree with what Erin said was that no one student is the same and not one teacher is the same. So I think one important thing is we should be hearing the voices of the students and teachers when deciding to make policies regarding equality in education and equality in pay for the teachers. And so I think that's really important for us to do, is to listen and to understand and to reflect that we understand those people's opinions in our policies.
Just to add on sort of what both Erin and Zoe have said, I think another thing we need to do is to increase funding to the education sphere. We provide a lot of funding to other spheres. For example, the police. I'm just going to use it as an example, right? The police, their job is to protect the community. But the problem is when we're trying to put police in situations where now, they're having to deal with all sorts of, drug abuse issues, homelessness issues, these kinds of issues that they're not supposed to be equipped with in the first place. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to put a Band-Aid onto this giant gaping wound. And so by funding our education system and providing money to the source, these are where all of our students are going to, or the majority of them at least, and this is where they're being educated. These are the kind of decisions, the place where they're going to learn things that are going to shape their futures. And if we can help to set them on a correct trajectory, then we don't have to worry about putting Band-Aids all over the place and trying to put Band-Aids on these cuts in the first place. Let's try to avoid getting these cuts in the first place.
Yeah, and Matt, I just add one small comment. You just never know who's going to have needs and when. And so the equity question is really central to society. A mini personal comment before I end up having to leave you guys. When I was born, I didn't speak until I was almost 2 years old. And at first I didn't know why. And so my mother, when she took me in for my early doctor's visits, they couldn't determine what was going on. I seemed disengaged, and the doctors were unable to figure out what was happening. So they did diagnose me, or they told my mother that they think that, and these are the words they used to use, that her child, I was her first child, was profoundly mentally retarded. And, we now say intellectually disabled. And what it turned out was I was deaf, and I had to have multiple surgeries on my ears. And ultimately I was lucky that after determining what health problem I had, they put me into some special education early on to get ramp me up and try to rev up my hearing and my communication skills and cognition. And I was able to catch up because the family was able to find good schools to put me in. And I caught up by the time I was 5 or 6. But if I had not had that benefit, or if they had not had good screening, which is some of the things we fight for and we fought for together, I very likely would have been institutionalized and never had any opportunities that I've had. So equity really does matter. We were not a rich family or a poor family, or just a middle-class family, and it was really difficult to imagine what would have happened otherwise. So we will find lots of different examples in society of how we might get people services and help out people to maximize their potential.
Thank you. Mahalo to all of you panelists and those who asked questions. Questions that weren't answered will be posted on our website later today. So don't worry if there's one in the question and answer chat, we'll get to those. Check out the website, HCYS2020 to check out your questions. Mahalo again to all of our panelists, and how about a nice round of applause for all of them.
Mahalo, Coco and Reggie. Thanks for asking those food for thought questions. We will now take a short 10-minute break, which will be followed by our breakout sessions. Please remember to check your email for your links to your breakout sessions. We will focus on these topics: healthy mind, healthy body, homelessness and housing issues, education, equality, diversity, and safety, and the environment. When we release you from this opening circle, please go to your breakout session link. If you do not have your link, please use the QR code on the screen to choose a breakout session. Breakout sessions will start promptly at 11 a.m. If you are having trouble getting to your breakout session, please email info@hawaiicys.org.